protocol dictates that I acknowledge the former President, His Excellency President Joseph Ejercito Estrada. Fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. At the outset, let me make my position very clear. While I opposed the controversial GRP-MILF Memorandum of Agreement on Ancestral Domain because of its constitutional infirmities, I remain a supporter of the Mindanao peace process. In fact, having been a member of the National Unification Commission chaired by the late Heidi Yorak, and as an advisor to the Government Peace Panel in the negotiations with the National Democratic Front under President Trump's administration, I am familiar with the tremendous challenge of forging peace to end decades of conflict brought about by social inequities among our people. In the ongoing GRP-Moro conflict, my position is straightforward. Government and the MILF must immediately return to the negotiation table, resume the peace negotiations, and let the peace process proceed. Despite the overwhelming odds, there is no alternative to peace in Mindanao. We can never give up on peace. I fully support the proposition that we cannot have stability and sustainable peace in Mindanao unless the historical injustices, perceived or real, inflicted upon the Bangsamoro people are recognized and addressed. Having said that, let us confront the issue at hand. Thus, the Memorandum of Agreement on Ancestral Domain recognize and address that historical injustice in a manner that will achieve peace and stability in southern Philippines. My respectful submission is that the MOA does not. I submit that a peace agreement should find a common ground to enable as many sectors and stakeholders to unite behind it. The MOA, instead of providing a common ground to unite us Filipinos, caused division among us. If implemented, it may kill any hope that Filipinos can find a way to live together. The MOA is a document that in language and effects demonstrates no loyalty to the Constitution nor to the Filipino people, but rather demonstrates an ideological loyalty to the concept of peace, even if it is peace by surrender. Why? First, the MOA lays the foundation for a separate and sovereign Bangsamoro state, a state within the Philippine Republic. The Government Peace Panel simply gave in to MILF's demand for the ultimate creation of an independent Islamic state, which will dismember our country. Second, the MOA does violence to the principle of respecting vested rights over private property, a cardinal rule of equity. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 4 elements of statehood: territory, people, government, and sovereignty. Under the MOA, the Bangsamoro state has a distinct territory. It is well defined, referring to the, quote, land mass as well as the maritime, terrestrial, fluvial, and alluvial domains, and the aerial domain, the atmospheric space above it, embracing the Mindanao, Sulu, Palawan geographic region. It has a distinct people. Under the Memorandum of Agreement, it is the birthright of all Moros to identify themselves as Bangsamoros, a distinct people consisting of those who were natives or original inhabitants of Mindanao, Palawan, and the Sulu archipelago. The Bangsamoro juridical entity, or BJE, is empowered to create institutions for governance as a state. Under the MOA, the BJE shall be empowered to build, develop, and maintain its own institutions, inclusive of civil service, electoral, financial, and banking, meaning they can have their own monetary system, education, legislation, legal, economic, and police and internal security force, judicial system, and correctional institutions, necessary for developing a progressive Bangsamoro society. This listing of institutions that BJE can create is not exclusive. The BJE is empowered to build, develop, and maintain other state institutions without limit. Moreover, under the MOA, the BJE may conduct its own foreign relations. The government recognized the right of BJE to enter into agreements with any friendly country and the option to establish and open trade missions in foreign countries with which it has economic cooperation agreements. The government is obligated under the MOA to ensure BJE's participation in the ASEAN and the UN. BJE's relationship with the Philippine government is described as associative, a relationship appropriate only among sovereign nations. That is why you have the ASEAN, or Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Associative relationship in international law connotes independence. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a growing support for federalism as a means of empowering local governments. But the MOA is not about federalism. It lays the groundwork for secession. We support the right of our Muslim brothers to full autonomy and self-determination, but they should not come at the expense of our country's sovereignty and the integrity of our national territory. The MOA does not respect vested rights over private property, as it provides that land tenure instruments of any kind or nature whatsoever granted by the Philippine government shall continue to operate unless otherwise modified and or cancelled by the BJE. Which this brazen disregard of vested rights is a flashpoint which can trigger conflict not only between Christians and Muslims, but between Muslims and Lumads as well.